I'd like to call this Town of Cedar Lake Planning Commission work session to order March 3rd, 2021. Would everyone please stand for the pledge? Mr. Carnahan?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Heather Gallagher,
Dessauer, present.
Jeff Sauer, Chuck Becker.
Here.
John Capero,
Present.
John Foreman,
Present.
Richard Sharp,
Here.
Jerry Wilkie.
Here.
Robert Carnahan,
Here.
Donald Olson,
Here.
David Austin,
Present.
Tim Kubiak, Jill Murr, Rick Everly.
Here.
That's it? Nope. Okay, Terry Knowles, here.
Thank you. Guess we'll jump right into new business, Hanover Community High School site plan. Owner petitioner, Hanover Community School Corporation, 10120 133rd Avenue, Cedar Lake, vicinity 10120 133rd Cedar Lake. Petitioner is requesting a site plan additions to the high school. So,
Thank you. Don Torringa with Torringa Engineering. I passed out, hopefully everyone has one. I put them in empty spaces too. I passed out 2 pages. The first page is an overall view of the high school, and what is being proposed is on there. You can see that the darkened areas in the front of the building, immediately north of 133rd. The second page is really the nuts and bolts of it. So if you look at the second page, the proposal is to demo the existing entrance portion and rebuild that. Add a larger concrete patio area in front of the entrance. And then move the concrete sidewalk further away from the building. Currently, there's a grass area there of about 10 to 12 feet. Move that, create some grass space between the building and the parking lot, adding new concrete sidewalk. We had the discussion about whether or not the parking could be within the 50-foot setback, and it is not within the 50-foot setback. The drive aisle is, and that was the determination that was made by the town that was acceptable. We've turned all of the parking from what we previously talked about, with some of the parking previously was pointed towards 133rd. None of it is now pointed towards 133rd. It is all pointed towards the building. 4 handicap spots, a total of 21 spots, 17 regular spaces. All the spaces are the minimum width of 10 feet and the minimum, I think it's 10 feet. Minimum width of 10 feet and the minimum depth of 20 feet. And then over on the east side of the existing building, there's the new addition, which is to be the early childhood center. With that addition, there is going to be some new sidewalk placed up against actually the curb will be taken out. The sidewalk will be a combination barrier type curb sidewalk. That's 8 foot wide for the entire length along the tennis courts there. With these improvements, what we have to do is we have to move a few street lights, a few of the parking lot lights, I call them street lights. And we had to relocate a sanitary sewer, relocate fiber optic, electric lines, storm sewers. So there was quite a bit of underground work to be done. And in speaking with Mr. Oliphant, what we have determined is that the existing detention area that currently sits, it's on the lower right-hand corner of this drawing, the current detention area. We are going to expand that no closer to 133rd. We're going to expand it in the westerly direction. There's a minimal amount of stormwater detention that we have to add because of the additional hard surface area. All of that will be submitted either tomorrow or Friday, depending on whether or not I get the other information back from the other people who are working on the project.
So the detention pond on the north side of the tennis courts will not be disturbed at all.
No, none of the water goes there.
Okay.
All of the stormwater from this area either goes into this detention pond or it goes across the parking lot into the existing detention pond that's on the far west side of the parking lot. What I have done is I have taken the amount of hard surface area that contributed to the parking or to the detention area on the west side of the parking lot. And I have graded it so we're not adding any more hard surface area. So the pond over there should be adequate too. We're not enlarging it, so. With that, entertain any questions you might have.
This addition says preschool play area. So is this preschool or is this early learning or is it what's it going to be called?
Well, it's called the early childhood center? Early childhood center.
Okay.
That was something that I took directly off of the plans that Gibraltar had given us. I believe it's going to be a grass area. I don't think it's going to be a artificial turf area. No doubt. A small fence, I don't know.
Okay. Now that we've added, you're planning on adding more traffic. What's going to be done about the traffic? 133rd is jammed to 41 to the school every afternoon. We're adding more cars now because the early learning center is going to have people going in and out all the time.
I don't know if that's actually the case. There's no plans for a traffic study. So as far as I know, nothing.
All right. Anybody else have any questions right now? No.
Not right now.
I'm impressed with the parking, that it's facing the
School?
existing building instead of shining out at 133rd.
Mr. Oliphant?
I have one question. To go over detention stuff, that's exactly what Don and I spoke about. So I'm on board with that. The sidewalk that's going to be up in the northeast corner, is that going to be part of this project or?
That's something I cannot answer. I was asking Dion that out in the parking lot.
Okay.
And I would think that it probably will be, so, but we don't know yet.
Okay. I'm just making sure it's tied to one of these projects. It's not
Correct.
another one. I assumed it'd be in this one.
It's not included in the site one, which that was approved 2 weeks back.
Yeah.
With all the site work that's being located on the west side, along with the locker room building. It won't be included now. Timing is just not working out for this. Going to be on March 16th.
Okay.
I think it'll be added to this project.
And I did receive from JMA Architects, who are the architects for the other project, a preliminary drawing as to where that sidewalk was to go, but I don't know if that's been approved or if that's.
Yeah, I think there's got to be some discussion with staff about
To
location.
be determined on the actual layout of where the two are going to meet. The school's going to put one into the northeast corner of their property and town's going to pick it up from there. But how you're going to route it to that northeast corner, that's just got to be discussed between the two parties. There was a time period of 2 years given to the school to complete that sidewalk. So we've got time to meet on that, but we have to determine that together.
I thought we discussed a couple options in this room.
We did.
Okay.
We did, yeah. Ultimately, the council's motion, I think, David, was that the two sides get together and decide the.
Yep.
Oh, it's more specific than that. So the engineers are gonna solve it.
Right,
Within 2 years, it'll be built.
right. Mhm.
But the school corporation couldn't pay for that sidewalk on the town's property. And so the town is going to take care of, if I remember right, about 450 feet, and the school's going to cover 1,200 feet. I believe that was a discussion in the town council meeting.
Correct, that's.
Councilman Foreman.
Yeah, I mean,
Is there- no,
we left it
I
at
have a-
the-
I have a question.
yeah.
Has there been any discussion of another exit off the school property to parish?
There hasn't since the last plan commission and the council meeting, though, there was not.
All right. All the lighting that's going to be changed will be compliant?
Yes, well, we, the same people that did the lighting for Hanover Elementary and for the JMA project, Millie's, they're using the same type of light.
Oh, that's not going to work.
No,
Those-
not with the retrofit, the same type of light with the middle school and those new lights.
Right,
Oh,
Not the
okay.
retrofit.
right, no.
All right.
Maybe I said that wrong.
Okay.
Those will be,
Right now, there's 2 or 3 lights that exist that have to be removed. Those lights are going to be moved off. You can see them on here. There's 3 lights, it's a new street light.
since we're locating poles,
Those are just the poles, the lights
We can-
themselves.
keep a better tab on it.
Right, the lights themselves will be faced towards the building, and they do have photometrics showing that it
Okay.
doesn't intrude onto 133rd.
All right. Anybody else have any questions? Okay. Next page.
So much.
Mr. Taringa, we're, these other things, this is all all part of this whole project.
Is this actually getting enlarged?
I think so too. I mean, we have I have a separate piece of paper that says update football field to turf. This is all rolled
Oh,
into.
that's in there,
This is
yes.
all- This is all
Yes.
rolled into everything, on
Yes,
the-
that's
everything
on
on
the
the big
first
page.
a little bigger
than
this existing one.
I didn't go over that, but if you want me to, I could.
Yeah,
No, I want to make sure.
It is part of it, yes.
Here.
oh, I see, yeah.
Right, certainly be higher.
A little bit bigger. Yeah, because I could right now put some out here.
There's really not much to that because the football field itself has drainage structures. I think there's something like 10 of them that surround the football field. And the existing storm sewers pretty much dedicated just for the football and softball field that drains to the existing detention pond all the way on the east side of the property. So as far as the artificial turf is concerned, it's a design build, meaning the contractor will come back and he will submit the design for the under drains and how the turf is to be built in the whole shot and just connect directly into the storm sewer.
Okay.
All of the basins around the perimeter of the football field will all be removed. And the entire drainage will be just the under drain system. So,
Okay. No, I was just going, had bullet points here. I just wanted to make sure we got it all. Everybody's good?
Good.
This item? Good with this item, okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Tranga. Item number 2, Hen subdivision site plan, Rob Hen 13733 Wicker Avenue. Petitioner Russ Posen, 1155 Troutwine Road, Cedar Lake. Vicinity is 13212 Wicker Avenue, Cedar Lake. Petitioner's request for preliminary plat for a 1-lot subdivision. We have anybody here for this item?
Doesn't appear that we do, Mr. President, and we have not, Don nor the town has received any update since the last meeting. So we will carry this over to the next work session next month, pending a submittal from the petitioner.
Okay, so we will see this again in a month, not in 2 weeks.
Jack, you don't have anything to do with this?
Not specifically, I know, like, that's, I've talked to Russ
Okay.
today, and that was what he communicated to me also, is that they were gonna be, there's some items that needed to get addressed, and we just didn't have time engineering wise to get it taken care of, so they're just pushing it on.
Okay. Yes, sir.
It'd be nice if we got a little communication on that, so that Rick could report it to us.
Oh, that's,
I understand, and I'll discuss that.
That'd be a good idea.
and that's why I said this will be back here in a month.
Good question, but they're here enough. They know how this works.
Yeah, well,
You guys are here enough to know that.
okay. Move on from there. Beacon Point East rezone PUD amendment, preliminary plat amendment. Beacon Point Cedar Lake LLC, 8900 Wicker Avenue, vicinity 9000 West 141st. Petitioners requesting a rezone PUD amendment.
Jack Halls from DVG representing the petitioner Beacon Point of Cedar Lake LLC. This project is an amendment to a PUD that was approved a couple of years back, actually last year, actually. I was thinking Beacon Point, Maine. Beacon Point East lies east of the Monon Railroad there on 101st. Phase one of this project's already constructed. There was some adjacent parcels that were zoned RM and R2. And as we talked about this, I think it was a month ago, Jack was here, kind of presented that plan. We've since then submitted full engineering and all those matters. So we're adding 13 additional lots to this project, fleshing out Channel Drive there, that second connection on the east side, filling in that area with a similar product that the subdivision already currently has. We're providing then extensions of the improvements on 141st all along the frontage there on 141st, so sidewalk, water main extension, sanitary sewer, storm sewer. All of this project is utilizing the existing facilities that are part of the original project, so the detention pond does have a slight modification to it, enlargement there, but essentially all of the improvements that were planned as part of this project ran through Channel Drive to get to the north there, so the sanitary sewer, water main extension. So it was pretty straightforward process for us to go through.
So the amendment is the orange area.
The orange area. So the down on the
lower right.
Down in the, yeah. So yeah. So what we've done there. So in the lots that we added are numbered 200s as opposed to the 100s. So you can see the 13 lots that were added as a part of this project. So the red line, you can see there's a 60-foot wide kind of area there. That was the original alignment for the road, was straight. And because we had the opportunity, we added a little curvature to that road. You'll see that the parcel on the west was zoned RM and the parcel on the east was zoned R2. And so this petition is actually seeking to add that then into the PUD, which would be and then in this particular area, these are 60-foot wide lots. They're the cottage home product that would be added to this.
So to be clear, nothing else changed on here except the addition of those
Nothing
lots?
else, exactly. Nothing else changed. Basically from that, I mean, the road got a little wiggly there, but nothing in the
rest.
Up to the north there. None of that has changed.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you cleaning it up.
Yeah, I think it provides us, basically now from Parish down to Sleepy Hollow Ditch, 141st on the north side of the road will be fully improved.
No.
So
No.
that'll be a nice benefit for the town.
So they got two requests here. One is to requesting rezone PUD amendment, and then the second one is requesting preliminary plat amendment.
Correct, yeah, so usually those petitions go together, there's a primary plat and a PUD together. So,
Yeah, they work hand in glove, but they are separate applications.
and we filed them together on the application.
Yeah, so we'll amend the plat, Bob, in a separate proceeding. And the right behind it's the PUD that incorporates the approved plat into it. We do need an amended contract.
Yes, and so Mark Anderson should be getting that to you shortly. And basically, it will be the exhibits, all the contract language will be the same, we'll just update the exhibits and the numbers and stuff.
We just want it current.
And when we vote on it in 2 weeks?
Yeah, so we're ready. I think we're ready for the
two
public
different
hearing.
votes.
We've addressed Don's review comments.
Okay.
So
Okay, you've advertised, you're ready for 2 weeks?
advertised, yep. So we should be ready.
So Dave, then the preliminary plat amendment goes first, then the rezone second?
Yes. The plat will be an addendum or an exhibit to the contract.
Oliphant, you're good?
Yeah, we issued a letter on the 24th. Jack's already responded to it. We're 25% through that next review, and they're minor comments, so we'll be ready in 2 weeks.
All right.
Can they be cleaned up between now and 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think there already are. He just needs to.
I just haven't gotten into it. Yeah, they'll be ready.
Well, you bring us 100%, 99% of the time, Jack. So,
Yeah, we try. We try. So,
thank you.
you got it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jack.
All right, next item, number 4, Cedar Lake Ministries concept plan. Owner petitioner, Cedar Lake Ministries, 13701 Lowerman, PO Box 665, Cedar Lake, Indiana, 46303. Petitioner is requesting a concept plan. Good evening.
Can I pass these out to you guys?
Sure.
Thank you. There's give one to Don too, if you would.
Thank you.
So I am Nathan Peterson. I'm a board member at Cedar Lake Ministries for about the last 5 years or so. And my history at the place, I grew up out there. My family's been out there for about 55 years. And so I know the history of the place for I guess my age. And I've been the one kind of leading, trying to kind of put this together for us so we can have this conversation to fix it, if you will. With me here, Brent Noel is the director for Cedar Lake Ministries. He's about 2 years, relatively new to the job, but certainly should probably meet some people in the room after we're all done. But so last meeting, we talked about this. Last meeting, you guys saw primarily these pages, the one with the little red setback lines and stuff like that, okay? What you didn't see was our draft of kind of the PUD kind of proposal, which is kind of what the first 3-4 pages are, okay? And at that meeting, if you remember, there was talk that we didn't have the old original PUD. It was kind of, we thought it was lost. Remember, we got to find that thing. And so that happened. Jill was able to find it after the last meeting, and that is included towards the back of this thing, the one where you're looking at the old Mylars, basically. And so what we've kind of pieced together as far as trying to understand how we kind of arrived at where we are is back in 91 and 93, there was a PUD done that incorporated this development plan that's on the last 3 pages of that packet. That PUD incorporated what I think for this meeting we'll call the meets and bounds property. You know, the fields where the shop is and the baseball, you know, the soccer fields and stuff like that. And so we had a PUD back in 93 that incorporated that area and also has the kids' youth camp built out in that area, okay? And then from there, it kind of gets a little bit unclear what happened. And so we've gone through, I think, 3 PUD revisions since that time. The most recent one being in 2018. And during those revisions, that meets and bounds property dropped off. It probably shouldn't have, but it did. And so if you look at like our 2018 PUD, it doesn't include that parcel. And so just wanted to give you that history of that's as far as what I put together, that's kind of I think where we're at. And so it's a little hard to understand and figure out. And so I think I just kind of want to focus this on what I'm kind of proposing we go forward with. And so in a high level sense, that is that we incorporate the meets and bounds property into the new PUD. Just like it was back in 93, dropped off at some point in between. Another thing I think that happened in that process is at the last meeting, we were originally talking about how this was a single lot PUD. At some point, I think in between 93 and they needed to get tax ID numbers established for all the individual houses that were out there. And so if you look on our 2018 PUD, we have lot lines now. We don't have a single lot subdivision anymore. We actually have individual lots that have tax ID numbers and parcel numbers. And so while we dropped off the meets and bounds property, kind of came off, we added lot lines at some point in the process as well.
Part of that was to be able to collect.
Yes, absolutely.
So because everything is a 99-year lease.
Right.
So if an owner got in the rears,
You need to know which one it is.
you need to know which one it was.
Absolutely, yeah. And so where we kind of sit right now is we have an old development plan from 93 that included the meets and bounds. We have a current PUD that has now lot lines, but dropped off the meets and bounds property. But going forward, we want to do, I think it's wise, I think that's what everybody would like to see, is a PUD that just gets all of it. And so when we talk about that, I kind of want to break it up and let's talk about the cottager side, like the bulk standards that we're proposing, which is basically the first 4 pages of this, as for all of the single family lots that are in there. These standards pretty much mirror what the town standards are today, with the large exception of the setbacks. We can't really comply with the standard R2 front setback, side setback, because we're kind of a cottage district and everything's so small, and so essentially we're adopting the town's standards, with the exception of when we get to setbacks, we're referencing, and instead of saying everything's 15 feet, we're saying for this lot, everything is referencing back to this, illustration, basically. And so, that's where we're headed. And I think that's kind of, the conversation that I kind of wanted to have with you guys is, are we pointed in the right direction? Trying to basically get it to the point where when somebody comes into the building department and says, I want to put my house right here, there's not a big, hands thrown up in the air going, well, I don't know what you're allowed to do because we don't have any written rules, and so I think it goes a long way towards helping the town administrate building permits and in home construction in the ministry property.
Okay, I guess what we had heard a year ago was not what was here a couple weeks ago. Because we got into the zip line, the meets and bounds piece of property, the climbing wall that wasn't going to be put there because that was part of the meets and bounds, because again, like you say, it fell off.
Yeah. When I think
and when I'm looking at the GIS, Don,
Yeah.
could you pull up the GIS going to the North Woods?
And it's on there as meets and bounds.
Up in there?
You're not, yeah.
No,
Yeah.
all the way in the North Woods, zoom in. Way up in the left corner, up at the top.
Okay.
Zoom in, go down a little bit. There's a little house right there on the right, the bottom of the page. It actually sits partially on an outlot. Zoom in a little more. That is,
That's as good as you get.
okay. Is that, yeah, you can see it on here.
Yeah, that guy.
That one right there.
Okay.
Now, on the GIS, it shows lot 83, and then it shows lot 88.
And I
Okay.
show, if I'm looking at the same one on here, I see lot 85. Right at the end of outlot 8.
No, that looks like 88. That's at the top of that curve.
Don, can you get the green off of there so we can see what that lot
The
is
top of the
actually
curve
called?
is 88, the bottom of the curve is 85.
82 is the middle-ish one.
Yeah.
85 is the
Well,
lower left.
Where I'm going with this is when you go on there and you click on something and you see what it is.
Right.
That little house, it says it's 1,500 square feet.
Right.
That little house, there's no way that house is 1,500 square feet. I looked at it the other day.
Okay.
Okay, the color picture shows, sometimes the GIS will show a color
Yeah,
picture.
yeah,
It
like
doesn't
a
even show
street
that, doesn't even show that house.
Sure.
It
Okay.
shows something else. Now, I understand there's some confusion, but there's been up to now, there's been no issue, no permits issued for anything from here because of all getting this together.
All this, yeah.
Yeah, and Jack, we talked about this a long time ago. When you guys kind of want to be your own AHJ for things. That's what this is about. Your own authority, having jurisdiction.
When you
That's-
say AHJ, you mean architectural control, or are you saying?
No,
I
just,
don't know if it-
you want to, what was told overhead by whoever it was
Okay.
2 weeks ago, that they didn't want to come here all the time for BZA stuff. They wanted to just make some decisions internally.
So.
And that's what I heard on the overhead.
Well, that was actually something that is more of a dialogue from the town standpoint, that because technically this is my understanding of how it would work today with the current PUD, is for us to change. This is roughly, our current PUD, and it's pretty much what we have today, right? Okay, so if this person here wants to build a deck,
Mhm.
technically we have to amend this PUD. And so if there's 22 permits that are going to get pulled in 2021, that means we're going to come through with 22 PUD amendments. And I don't know, and the feedback that we've gotten from the town is that's a lot of administrative work to do versus normally when 22 permits come through, they run through the permit office, not the BZA. And so it's trying to come up with rules that the BZA can approve that will allow, as long as it meets those rules, it wouldn't have to come here and administratively take up a process and be able to go to the building department as long as it fits in the box, but this box is pre-approved, if you will. So I guess that's what I would say.
Yeah, I'm just, I understand that part of it. That is no different than most of the space in town.
Okay.
I mean, we have existing non-conforming everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah, I
Everywhere.
understand.
It is-
Cottage
it is-
districts and
it-
stuff
it
like
is-
that,
It
yeah.
is everywhere.
Right.
But when there's been no permits issued, from my understanding, in 2021
Correct.
for the ministries.
Absolutely.
And somebody sent me a screenshot of someone who's renovating 88, whatever 88 is. For renovating lot 88 for 8 people. Mr. Knowles, are you aware of any of that?
Yeah, I'd go that way.
I mean, I just, if there's things going on in there and you guys can't keep track, less oversight from us may not be the greatest idea either. And there was some correspondence after the last meeting regarding the public
I'm
safety.
trying to find 88.
Yeah.
Where is
It's supposed to be that little house there. There's an old number that says 88, and then there's a new number that says 83. But I believe that was all involved. That was all encompassed in what Mr. Matua brought here several years ago, when the north area was redivided,
Okay.
and the south area was redivided
Okay.
after the building was torn down, the wood shop.
Yep.
So that was all that was all chopped up and it was.
More lots, so to speak.
Yeah, and I know Tim worked with Sanusi on
Uh-huh.
getting it, a lot of
Laid
little
out or
pieces, a
whatever.
lot of
Okay.
little pieces to get it, to get it right.
Okay, okay.
And I'm having a hard time. I understand you want some lines and we've heard many petitions in here. BZA, John and I sat on the BZA for quite a while now. When somebody comes from the ministries, especially Lakeside, they have a deck, now they want to cover it, 3 seasons room. The issues in this room are not between them and us, it's with the neighbors.
Correct.
So,
Right.
so who's gonna handle that now?
So the way that this is proposed from the standpoint of, I'll digress a second. Tomorrow night, we have a cottager meeting where I'm basically going to try to give them a update on this process. And the way that I'm explaining it to them is that, as of today, when somebody in here wants to build the sunroom or whatever it is, they want, they get to come up with basically whatever they want. And then they get to walk in here and say, I want to build a sunroom. You guys say, you look at us and you go, okay, go ahead, whatever that looks like. What we're trying to do is make it to where if somebody wants to build a sunroom and they're at their setback line, they don't have to come ask. Can I build my sunroom towards the lake? My house is already, I got 15 more feet a lot. Can I do that? Then it blocks the neighbor out and they're mad and all that kind of stuff. And so the way that this is written is that, one, obviously they have to stay inside the rules. But two is that we would have a ministry approval requirement, basically architectural control like an HOA has, for dealing with the little squabbles that happen between one guy's opinion and the next guy's thing.
But you have that now. Because when somebody comes into the BZA, one of the first questions is, has the ministries board said this is okay?
Okay.
So how is it going to be different?
How's it gonna be different is that we're implementing a set of rules for them instead of just our subjective, because that's what happens with, to be honest with you, with our board sometimes is that you get, 5 people on it that like this neighbor and all of a sudden the sunroom gets built that year.
Well, it's definitely a popularity contest.
I know.
Because
Yeah.
you and I could talk for hours about the history.
Yes. Yeah. And so what we're trying to take away is that from the sample, it's not subjective. It's not, oh, well, I'd like to put a shed, like we have all those random sheds on the lakefront, right? We talked about that last time, right? So those happen over the years between somebody that asked and the right guy says yes. And so we're trying to make it concrete. So, it'll be in the PUD. You can't put a shed down on your lakefront. Just flat period, no. So when they come in here, if they wouldn't get here, number one, because they're following the rules, but it's not, well, my buddy was, in charge of the cottager committee architectural control that year and he approved it for me. So I got their approval. Do you guys want to approve it? And you're sitting here going, well, wait a minute. I thought we weren't doing that. Now we are doing that.
Well, and part of the BZA responsibility is to address depreciation issues. I mean, that's legally what we have to do.
Sure.
So, I mean, you understand my question and my concern.
Yeah, but this PUD, other than it's an old neighborhood with an old PUD and a lot of non-conforming, lots and houses, it's the same issue with any of our PUDs. It's only as good as the PUD and or the HOA. In this case, the ministry is acting as the HOA, whereas in Centennial, there is an HOA, but it's up to us regardless as a town and code enforcement to pay attention. People start building sheds we're not supposed to in Centennial. It's easy to see.
Yeah.
Here, it's not a gated community. We're able to also have the code enforcement stroll through that. Now we all, look at the trailer park that's behind them. We had a strict set of rules and I haven't been in there since we did this PUD for them. So the question is, are they listening to those rules? And if not, it's our problem for not enforcing them.
But at
Same
least,
here.
at least you know what they are.
Right.
And that's where I'm trying to get.
Yeah, and
to,
I like
know.
what you guys are trying to do, only from the
Yeah.
standpoint of it. It's what as I mentioned a couple weeks ago, it's what we need to implement in some of our existing non-conforming subdivisions that are cottage homes on the lake. And this is kind of an interesting subject to me, because it's almost like a roadmap for us.
What's-
Utilizing their.
That's what the BZA is for.
Yeah, mhm,
I mean, that's the bus.
that's correct.
That's the bus.
When I think with the
And
difference
I know,
between.
and I know what you're trying to do, but, I mean, there's a letter floating around here somewhere from one of our public safety officials regarding his concerns. I don't know if have you seen that?
No, I have not.
Okay. Because of the cottagers and the setbacks and all, I mean, I understand that, but the PUD, the business has changed. This
Yeah, and
picture
that-
here shows a lot of things on the 40 acres drop off
Yep.
that aren't there.
Right.
I was told there was never going to be any hard surface parking because that costs more for stormwater. So, I understand this piece of it,
Mhm.
but what we were told a year ago was going to be, I mean, like a real package. I mean, the whole thing.
So if you remember when I started, I said I wanted to kind of break it into two pieces. One is kind of the cottager control, if you will.
Yep.
And then the second is more ministry stuff. And so I'm going there.
Okay.
And so on the cottager side, the thing that's, I think, is a blessing and a curse is that it's kind of like a cottager, like the northwest corner of the lake, it's just it's a hot mess of
It's
problems. But the thing is, they don't allow common ownership. So it's hard to get agreement on what the rules should be and all that kind of stuff. But we actually have that as an advantage. And I think this allows us to take advantage of that. We can say, hey, we agree to this set of rules for 89 lots, that start to bring them into being kind of modernization of the rules that we operate by. Because right now we don't have rules. You can't go in there and really do code enforcement because you literally don't have a set of rules to read on what to enforce. And so this adopts what are literally the town's current rules, with exceptions for setbacks and stuff like that, because there's just no way. And so I guess where I wanted to kind of ask is this going in the right direction for what we want to accomplish to administratively work with the cottager side of the ministry lots?
So I think I want to just interject just a little.
You and I have talked
Yeah,
many times about this.
The original PUD, filed in 91, was a rezone from an R2 to a PUD.
To an R2
An R2 PUD, okay? The 93 PUD zoned the parcel from an R1 to a straight PUD. So it's unclear as to what, if any, is an underlying zoning. Okay, so when if anybody was to come to the BZA and ask for a petition or a variance on a lot, what are we variancing? Are we variancing the R1 zone, the R2 zone, the PUD? That makes it unclear. And that is the reason why we want to do the bulk standards for the residential lots. Is it not that we're trying to take power away from the BZA, but we want to make it clear what can be done so that your BZA actions, the effort is not to say, hey, we want to take you guys out of the picture. We want you to be part of the picture and tell us what you agree. If you don't agree that a 5-foot side yard on a side yard is acceptable, then great, tell us, what do you want it to be? And that's what we'll put it on there. And that way, then if the other benefit is that if somebody, you were talking about depreciation. most of these houses are older. They're gonna need to have remodeling at some point. How is that done? How, you know, if somebody comes in and buys this property and they don't know, they can't determine what the zoning is, they don't know if they're gonna get BZA, and they don't know the bulk standards, they have no idea what they can and can't do, that actually devalues the property.
But you're talking about a fourth of our town. You guys aren't the only people with cottage homes and things like that.
No,
That's the problem I'm having separating it.
But so the R2 zone says you have to have 10,000 square feet. Over half of these lots are 4,000 square feet. So to do anything on any one of these lots means we have to come in, and we're not saying, hey, we want to do something outlandish. We're saying, hey, the 25% lot coverage, that's your ordinance, that's what's in the rules. We're saying, hey, we can't really do 5 foot, or we can't do 30 foot when the lot depth is 100 feet. So the existing building's at 15 feet. So the front yard is 15 feet. And we want you guys to look at that and say, yeah, we agree with that, or we don't agree with that.
Is that what's in here?
That's all in here.
Okay.
That's what we want. We want your feedback on that, so that if you disagree about the lot coverage and bulk standards, let's get that sorted out. Then we can go to the cottagers and say, this is the footprint, this is the height, this is what you can do. You can't go get a variance. This is what you can do on your property.
No, I don't think any of this is a bad idea, but because of everything going on there, I'm not sure that's my priority. But you still have to get a building permit, you still have to do all those things.
Sure, right.
So are you gonna do 5 foot side, for example, are you gonna do 5 foot side yards for every piece of property? So each piece of property will have its own,
That's what this is.
Yeah.
Is there an equation behind that, or just?
Not so much on, the setbacks are primarily based upon the current house location and also the setbacks on the adjoining lots, trying to kind of balance them.
So you just don't
the
get,
smaller lots, like if, like there's some little postage stamp lots, that are 2,500 square feet. They have, 5 foot setbacks on all sides, because that's the building that's sitting on there right now is 5 feet away from all sides. There is a little bit of an equation in here. There's a number on each lot percentage wise, which is maximum lot coverage ratio. That was based on taking the existing lot coverage ratio. We actually calculated it, and then basically said you can be that size, and a lot of them we gave maybe like a 5% buffer. If they wanted to add something, they could add a little. And so it really cut down on, you couldn't go build McMansions on these sites by the time it was all done, because of the lot coverage ratio part of it.
So what I'm hearing is there won't be any standard for just say the setbacks, because each lot is an individual on its own. So each lot, if you've got, how many lots you got there?
80, call it 80, 90, yeah.
Call it 90.
Yeah, right.
So you're gonna have 90 different standards, because lot 12 is gonna be different from lot 32.
Right, but you couldn't apply because of the nature of the sizes and the unique geometry of them, you actually couldn't apply a standard. If you took, say, the R2 or whatever, setback standards and applied it to every lot, my gut is that you would be 85% non-conforming.
So we can't really call it bulk standards then.
Well,
Unique
then
standards.
is here, you're gonna have to have 90.
Not bulk.
No, so the way it works, so like, for example, like if you look at page 3, side setback, not less than the lesser of the current side setback denoted for each lot on exhibit A, or what your standard is 8 feet. So it's 8 feet unless on this drawing, it's different.
I guess the bulk standard would be, you can't build anything farther out from the house at any one point of so many feet. That would be a bulk standard, but that would create problems for some of the properties.
But if you look at the GIS, even the houses on the lake are on the property line.
Yeah.
So every house is in a different,
No, I understand.
right.
I understand.
Yeah.
Are we gonna get a new Mylar or plat
Eventually.
Eventually.
showing your red lines and all this defined?
Correct.
That's the
Yeah,
goal.
I think,
Because I need,
Right.
I would need to see that.
Oh,
before-
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
Before we
we're
go-
talking conceptual, how to,
and I need to go over this. I mean, we got this 2 minutes before you start talking,
I understand.
so we need to go over it.
I think you should.
Oh, this is just a work session. So
If you
that's what we're
Yeah,
doing.
I know, but I'm just saying, you know, but it'd been nice if I had some time to read this, because I am retired and nothing else to do.
He responds,
You would've read it.
he responds to emails immediately though.
But
So-
Mr. Chairman,
Hang on.
I would like one subdivision here, in order for them to get a permit, they have to go through their building committee. And the building committee has to sign off on it, 2 people. Okay, they actually have a form you have to fill out, and you
Yep,
have to give
application, yeah.
your plat, the whole shot.
Yep.
So I would expect
That
the
language is actually
ministry
in
to
there.
do the same thing, to walk in and say, here's the approval from our board, here's our
Please.
survey, this, and now the building department can look at it and say, yeah, okay, all that's in order, now we can go ahead.
Does it meet all this?
Or
Yeah.
this is missing. So is that spelled out in there like that?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes?
It says, yeah, it has
Okay.
language in there that every application needs to be accompanied by.
Yeah,
a
because
approval from the-
right now we've got the opportunity to put this
Yep.
right, make it right for you guys and make it right for us.
Right.
And sitting on the BZA, I certainly don't need 22 permits
That's what we're trying to.
for
get
one
away from.
night. I mean, we've sat there till midnight
I know.
at the
yeah.
BZA.
You said you retired.
You got nothing to do.
But
He's got a bedtime.
I go to bed at 10.
Don't get up at 4. All right,
Um,
one second, while we're on the subject, I thought 2 weeks ago when the Holy Grail showed up on the miraculously, which is still a little concerning to me. Didn't we ask for a copy of that? Didn't
Now,
ever?
remember, I offered to to send you copies. They're big files. They're 4 and 5 meg files.
Okay, I'm more curious at the verbiage here that,
It was suggested that I bring these to this meeting, which I did. I brought
Okay.
a full-size version to this meeting. I
okay.
can certainly send them to you if you can accept.
Well,
files,
I would
can,
just,
or-
I would just like to read what was,
Yeah, it's a
what
little-
was originally in here because,
That's why I wanted to send it to you electronically, so you could zoom in on those sections. So if you'd like, I'd be happy to send it to you electronically. I just, like I said, they're big files, 4 and 5 megs.
Or you should come down here and look at this.
Each sheet is a 4 meg or 5 meg file. But again, and if you want them in hard copy, I'll have Public Works.
I'm just wondering if you can you just give us the paper version of the verbiage?
Yeah, I can just copy this section of it, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah,
The notes.
so we're not jamming the,
Yeah.
we're not jamming the internet.
yeah, sure.
Okay, all right.
So I guess on the, what we'd like to do is, this is draft for us, right? Okay. And can you help me with the timeline? Because I don't remember the dates.
Yeah, so we have the official petition will be filed next week for the agenda for April. So we'll be back with a work study in April, with hopefully a public hearing in April. If we're still working out some details, then we'll take care of that in May. But ideally, we'd like to have it fully addressed. So you're seeing stuff kind of hot off the presses. We didn't expect you to take any action on it. We were just
Yeah. no.
showing you that there is stuff that we will be receiving soon.
And you can
Well,
take this home and it'll be.
And as you know, we appreciate any input, anytime.
Yeah, but I think you provided some helpful feedback already this evening, and I think there's more to come.
Yeah.
In the presentation.
I do think though, for the record, do you have that letter from,
From Chief Wilkening,
yes,
I've seen it. I could probably,
Can I just ask real quick?
Yes.
So this is what you're gonna be presenting next month? No changes, no
Oh, no.
additions, nothing? just-
We'll probably, this is a draft of it, it'll be very close to this. It's worth like, if you want to take this home and read it.
Yeah, it's just a
It'll-
lot of information to soak in. quickly
Absolutely,
and
yeah,
then
no,
talk
so
about.
take this home, read it, look at it. When you get the official version, it'll be, there'll be some little tweaks to it, but it's pretty much gonna be this.
Got it, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, when our experts read it, then,
Then they can
yeah.
decide, yeah, I understand.
What were you gonna say? No, I just thought Dave had something.
Oh, okay, all right.
I got it here somewhere.
Okay, all right, when you find it.
So that's where we're headed on the cottager side, okay? Let's talk ministry side, okay? I can actually read it. So I'm gonna read you what was in the meets and bounds area on this guy. So Development Area 3, which is the youth camp area. Development Area 3 includes 30 RV campsites with required parking and a bathhouse servicing building. 2 youth camp housing units for 80 campers. A youth camp dining hall, kitchen, and chapel. A recreation field and 30-car gravel parking area. That's what it was in 93. So that's just what it
And
says.
seeing the picture and what's there now is not even close. And that's why
There's no
we
shop on.
need to
I
be
mean,
thorough.
The RV park, I think, is pretty much exact, but besides,
I would say that might be exact.
yeah, but besides
Is
that,
that, is that 12 months? Is that 12 month a year?
12 months a year,
facility?
and I want
And
to
anybody-
have
and
a
anybody- and
conversation
anybody-
about that.
Okay, go ahead.
Absolutely. So I'm actually going to overstep my bounds a little bit here because it's not like this has been talked about a lot from the board standpoint. Is that it's my understanding that the town has concerns that people are just living there. Okay. And there's a logical question of, is that really part of the ministry or is this an RV park? I would say that I have the same concern. We've talked about that as far as, trying to, when you come buy a property out there, you have to make an application, kind of be approved, of like mind, and you move on in, right? We don't necessarily do that with our RV people. I kind of think we should, just to make sure it's all one big happy family. I also don't think somebody should be living out there for 6 months straight. And so in the version that you will see, this isn't in here, but in the version that you will see, there'll probably be some language that we propose for kind of some constraints around use of the RV park. Length of stay, pre-qualifications, things like that. And so trying to do some things like that, because I agree, I don't think it's not a residence, it needs to be a place to come in and enjoy for a short period of time and then let somebody else come in after that. So does that help a little bit?
Oh, yeah, because I mean, I know for a fact that
Oh, yeah.
what was shared with you is accurate.
Yeah. So
So,
we will have some language that we propose when you see the updated version of this in a week or two. Okay. So back over on the ministry side of things. The way that, like you're saying, the Holy Grail, it's kind of fun to see this from my standpoint, because I remember being around in the 90s when they kind of were gifted that property and the plans that went on with my dad on the board at the time for a kid youth camp out there. And so it's kind of funny for this to kind of show up and, because we didn't know where it was. And so when I saw this, I got to be honest with you, my reaction was, well, that's not that far off from conceptually where we still are as far as what we want to do out there. And so what we kind of plan on doing from the PUD standpoint is trying to encapsulate those uses in a narrative standpoint, just like this kind of did, as far as, youth camp, chapel, dining hall, that sort of thing. There'll probably be a couple things, to be honest with you, that aren't on this existing list. That would be like multi-purpose building, something like that. But it pretty much is what's on here now with maybe, again, a couple tweaks that you'll notice, we'll point out when they come. And so really what we're, I think, proposing structurally is a PUD that has two parts. One is the contract, which is essentially the first 4 pages of this, saying we agree that this is what we're going to abide by. And then the second is our plan of development, which will essentially be, now the whole thing, what I call the conference grounds piece and the meets and bounds parcel. And then also the Bolt property, if you look on here, everybody know what that is? There's like little greenhouse that's kind of right before the corner on the left.
Mm-hmm.
That property is now ministry property. They gave it to us when they passed on. And so it will incorporate that as well. So we'll basically grab everything and lump it into one fresh PUD.
So that brings me to another question. The woods have been cleaned up, cleared,
Yes.
et cetera.
Yes.
Is there not some stormwater that has to be done with those ravines as they relate to the lake?
So that's what that actually. So about a month ago, Jerry?
They've done it. They completed the majority of it. We still have to do the last portion that's basically behind the RV park over to the mailboxes right here.
Okay, so
I'm talking about the ravines to the north,
the Northwoods,
the
ravines, if you will.
big ravines.
Yeah, which still
Yeah.
flow into where we did the repair underneath the road. I think it has the same point or whatever. So the issue that is happening up in the north side of this thing. So like, you guys know what we're talking about. This area that we were looking at on the map a little minute ago, there's lots up here, right? Well, there's no road to them. That's not okay, right? So
It's a gravel road.
but I'm saying the gravel roads aren't on the platted road.
Oh,
If
they're
you
not-
look on this
they're not-
drawing, the
they're not
gravel's
drawn-
actually on there and it's like willy-nilly, it's all over the place. And so I don't think we should be allowed to build on any of those until all of that is figured out up there. No building permits issued until probably drainage study is done on that area. And then no building permits are issued until the roads are actually constructed.
What size lots are those?
Those are some of the bigger ones.
Looks like it.
84 by
84.
167, 989 by 167.
Yeah.
84 by 167, 104 by 167.
I believe Mr. Matua, when he came in, as I was mentioning earlier, part of that amendments were for those and the other ones were for the south.
Those are bigger than our 2 lots.
Yeah, quite a bit.
Yeah, they might be our 1 size.
And so that area up there it needs some planning, essentially, from an engineering standpoint. Obviously we kind of have a plat.
Yeah.
Whether we should or not is let's debate that later.
Got to start somewhere.
You got to start somewhere. And so I think, what I would want to propose there is that, basically we come up with some language that'll be a tweak that basically says, lots X, Y, and Z up there, are unbuildable until BZA approves a, engineering and drainage plan. for those-
Okay.
for those.
But where the new climbing wall is,
New climbing.
Is there a climbing wall?
Yeah, I was like, I don't know what. We have.
I think they
Mr. Everly?
changed that.
Mr. Everly, the deer stand that I referred to it as,
Yeah.
wasn't that a climbing wall?
It's about, I would say, 10 to 12 feet tall, and it's in the Northwoods area. It's up against a tree, and it looks like, I don't know what kind of platform it is, but
Somebody told you, didn't you say somebody told you it was a climbing wall?
I think that's what Tim referred to it as.
Okay.
After you referred to it as a deer stand, which in our.
There's some
I
sort of-
apologize for the sarcasm.
Some sort of constructed thing in the North Woods.
Right.
Yeah, that area there. And we got two stormwater experts here. Do any of those ravines need to be modified for sediment? I mean, as we're clearing the ground, I mean, we're gonna get,
I mean, we'd have to take a look at it.
okay, all right. And you did all the work's done. Topo's all done, everything's done for all the property.
Yes, we have topo.
Okay, right.
Brent, that structure has about, I'm gonna say 4 or 5 stairs going straight, like a ladder going straight up. So I don't know what it is or why it was built there.
We have 15 what we call low ropes or team building elements for problem solving and teamwork. And
Like balance beams and stuff like that.
that one is the only one that is 14 of them are not even a foot off the ground. So you're traversing over a block or you're working to go through a spider web. You know, school groups utilize those for problem solving and communication.
In my building background, if they're more than 4 feet off the ground, they shouldn't have been built.
Well,
Because that's
I
the
just,
rule.
I want to,
So,
I just want to make sure that we got it all.
Yep, absolutely.
Every last stone.
Thing, yeah. You know, I want to give you the reason why for us. We have to raise money to do everything out there. You know, that Cedar's building that we built on the corner, that newest building that's out there.
Yeah, it's very nice.
We did that, you know, we raised $450,000 to do that. And then obviously we're able to build it. You know, about a year ago, we were able to get a grant to do the zip line. You guys heard about the zip line, right? Got $150,000 to do zip line. Obviously that didn't happen. Just because of this, right? You know, like we didn't have
Well, let's not forget about COVID.
COVID too. Fair enough. That's been fun this year for us. And so one of the things that we just really need is to be able to know what it is we can do. You know, multi-purpose building. If we want to go raise $3 million to build a multi-purpose building, we need to know at the end of that campaign that we don't have to give all the money back because we couldn't do it. And so that's what I think this will really help us with, you know, from our needs standpoint is just being able to say, well, you know what, we know that now when we want to build that multi-purpose building, we're going to have to come in here with drainage and impervious surfaces and figure it all out. Right. And you're going to be able to say, I don't want it there. I want it a little bit over here, you know, and we still have to do that, but at least we know we can put up a multi-purpose building. And that's the ultimate of what we're really kind of trying to.
And the messiness of all this are the buildings that are out there now, storage buildings, maintenance buildings, whatever they are. You know, there's a permit on a piece of property that
I know.
doesn't exist.
You know,
So
like when you
whatever
look at that development plan and you realize the shop's right in the middle of it all. You
Well,
know,
that's-
it's
yeah.
it's frustrating.
Does your the campground thing that you were mentioning,
Youth camp,
does
yeah.
the campground,
Oh, RV park.
the RV park?
Okay.
Is that how the boat dock marina, is that how that works?
So the boat dock marina has been run by the men's ministry, so to speak. It's like the men's group Bible study that organizes that every year. And so they organize, if they gotta repair the dock, they use the funds to repair
Right.
the dock. When they kind of build up some funds, they do a project out at, that little walkway that they put in a couple years ago, the cement one that's kind of right in front of the dining hall. They did that with their fund.
Proceeds from dock.
Proceeds from dock, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Docking
So
boats.
it's run by a group of guys that then basically they'll do landscaping one year, they'll, whatever.
So is there an application to allow if you want a boat
Yes.
slip?
I believe so.
I got you.
I don't.
I got you.
Yes.
They go for the, I think it's the harbor master, we got two of them. and So they have to approve it. But though, the intent by the marina is for the non-waterfront people, like Jerry. that
Right.
doesn't have one, that goes to somebody within, that's an amenity for being.
Yeah.
being there.
Yeah,
So-
for the non-lake.
So
side
the
lots.
same rules for like the campground.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anybody have any questions?
No, I like what they're trying to do. I think it's gonna streamline a lot of things.
Yeah, I
Well,
like what you're trying to do.
We
It's a
try,
lot of work,
we
lot of
try to
work.
make things simpler for staff,
Yeah.
whether
Yeah,
they think so or not.
Yeah.
My only worry is about like the 5-foot setbacks on the side yards, especially if the places ain't even been built yet. Do we really, except, what about the safety issue?
Well, I think we're at 8 feet today, aren't we?
Yeah, yeah, what he's saying is they're 5 feet on properties that are already occupied and have 5 feet or less of side yard, but if they're not occupied already, then they have to meet the R2 standard of 8.
Now, are these occupied up here?
No.
No, I don't think.
But they have a 5-foot setback.
They're-
It says.
Those are 8.
No, they're 8.
Yeah.
They're 8.
Yeah, I know, it's hard to read.
No, those are 8.
Yeah, they're 8.
It's hard to read.
I use my magnifier on my
Sorry.
iPhone.
I'll
Then I didn't know
I'll
where
print
I
them
was
out bigger
looking.
next time.
Did you find that letter?
I did not.
What was the general sense of the letter that?
The fire chief sent a letter regarding allowing things to be made tighter and tighter.
Okay.
And if you can shoot that to them, that'd be great. That way.
Take it into
I'm not
consideration.
Well, I mean, just
Yeah.
just read it and
Yeah.
think about it.
You know, like I said,
Because it's tight, like a lot of things are, and the fire trucks aren't getting smaller.
Right.
And it's just, it needs to be mentioned.
you know, we need to look at that, I think, from a building envelope standpoint for site triangles on our corners.
So exactly, they're not making it tighter. They're using existing boundaries right now.
Right.
When they have a vacant lot, like he was talking up.
Yeah.
Whatever, then they fall back, like Mr. Everly said, into the town ordinances.
Yep.
And the 8-foot side setbacks and what have you. So we're not trying to squeeze anything in or make it tighter. Or they're not, you know, they're just
It is-
trying.
yeah, like it's-
When you put additions on though, that are within that red line, you are making things closer.
But
Very
theoretically,
true,
though,
but
that
they
red
still
line-
have to come through the building
Yeah.
department, and if the building department doesn't seem to, feel as if that is advantageous, then they're gonna deny the permit. So, I mean, and plus they have to go through their board, and hopefully they'll have a unbiased board,
Right.
that it's not gonna say, it's my brother-in-law, he can do what he wants. Just say it's my brother-in-law, and he can't do anything,
Right. Because
So, I
it's,
mean-
because it's right here.
Right.
Instead of
because
right
it's
now,
there.
it's not.
I like that. It just needs, like you say, some tweaking.
You don't want your brother-in-law next to you.
Not my brother-in-law.
What is-
There's also a clause about non-conformance. So if there's, let's say, and we picked 5 feet because that gives, that's typically the minimum that public safety would want in some facilities. Some of the buildings actually currently are more than that. And so there's language in there that says that if you're over, you're non-conforming, you can't increase your non-conformance at all. So the square footage, if you have 10 square feet that overhangs, you can't increase your non-conformance by any. You have to build inside the red.
Yeah, like when you look at this thing, there are a lot of properties where the red line runs through the house.
Right.
Okay? And
I
so
got you.
they can't just say, well, I'm gonna go longer and still be the same distance across that red line. No, you can't go across that red line at all because you're increasing your non-conformance. So you have to build in the box, basically.
You may want to check the language on that in Roman numeral 3.
Okay.
And what is Exhibit A?
It's a problem. It says does increase, it doesn't say
Oh,
does
it's,
not.
okay. Okay.
It says the opposite of what you.
Rome, that was 3,
Roman numeral 3.
does increase. Gotcha.
But those,
And there's also a lot of fee structures that are not on.
That's Exhibit A.
Well, and even further,
We're really trying to set this thing up for future. We know these properties are gonna be improved. We're gonna spot now in that time where people are buying properties and they're improving them. And so you want to put some rails on it so that we all know that it's gonna get done properly.
I mean, I think your non-conforming lots, though, the smaller ones, with your kind of square footage for lot coverage, it almost makes it impossible to say add on to a
There are some
non-conforming lot. You're gonna have to tear it down and start over. You can go up, I guess. But how are you gonna go up if, say, your corner is across?
if what,
How would you go up if, say, the corner of your house is in that setback?
you wouldn't be allowed to.
No.
Like, yeah, correct, yeah.
So it's virtually
yeah.
impossible. So it kind of corrects itself in a way, I guess.
It is a little bit, yeah, right. What we do, like on non-conforming, is we actually incorporate non-conforming buildings title XXV Town of Cedar Lake zoning. You know, like that's, instead of writing our own non-conforming idea, it's yours. So it's something the town is familiar with when they're looking at anything. So, but, okay. So,
Does anybody have any questions? No?
No, I think we got.
Gotta read.
yeah, I gotta read, yeah, gotta read,
Read.
absolutely, understand.
Okay. Mr. Peterson, was there any other pieces to the puzzle?
Did you go to Hanover? You grew up at,
I grew up in Crete-Monee.
oh, did you?
I went to Crete-Monee. I grew up in Crete,
I got you.
out by Tuckway Golf Course, actually.
Very nice.
I spent my summers there. So,
You know where that is?
I do.
my dad went to Hanover
Yeah.
with Peterson. If anybody went there, I don't know when he graduated. All right, thank you. guys.
Yeah, good
Yep.
job.
Nice
year.
All right. Okay, let's see, I guess we're gonna get, Mr. Austin, you have anything?
Concerning,
Anything right offhand?
got a lot of things in my mind. None of which
Touche.
Scary
Uh,
question.
public record.
Mr. Everly, was there anything pertaining to any of these items we've heard? No? Okay. All right, then we'll get to the update items.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I presume though in 2 weeks, the floor will be open for dialogue.
Okay.
Should be an agenda item for discussion.
What, I'm sorry, on what, which of
Which
the,
item?
On the last item,
the last item's not coming back until next month.
well, they may not be coming back, but
To-
we just got 2 minutes before this meeting, documentation pretty substantial and a presentation, so.
Reviewing that, leaving it on the next work session agenda to review the red marks,
Are you talking in 2 weeks, though?
2 weeks.
In 2 weeks, 4
So it'd
weeks.
be an update item.
I'm sorry, 4 weeks.
It would just be an update item.
There's gonna be, this was kind of conceptual. On next Friday, which is the snow deadline for the April meeting, will be a complete package for review, just like any other petition.
4 weeks, and I guess.
Yeah, so that's what we're intending.
That's why I said
4 weeks, we'll be back.
Okay,
for study,
all right.
And then public hearing in 6 weeks.
Okay.
What-
That works if takes longer to vote.
Well, I'll probably talk to him before then.
And we
Talk to
can,
the president.
and we can't discuss this at the next meeting as an update item based on Dave's review of the document.
Good.
We can't we?
Sure.
Yeah.
If you want it on as an update item for your meeting in 2 weeks, you can certainly
Yeah.
do that. They're just, the petitioner's not gonna be back here for
Right.
for that.
We're gonna go over this as an update item in 2 weeks after your review.
It's up
Are
to you.
you good?
I suspect
Are you good with that?
You gotta be good with it. I mean, I work for you.
No, I
Let's
meant,
just keep it on the next work session. Well, it gives us,
well, I mean, you'll have this reviewed in 2 weeks.
I'm gonna make a report, probably.
Okay, all right. Well, put it on there, and if we don't do it, we don't
have it,
update
we don't
item.
have it.
If we don't need to do it, we won't do it.
Right.
Okay. The update items on the list, Rose Garden Estates Water Main Extension.
We just received a semi-authorized easement agreement between Lennar and Schillings for essentially the easement through the spike strip. So David requested that it be converted to essentially a full utility easement, not just a water easement. So they would have to correct that, but they said they're about a week out from making it entirely official.
Okay,
So
all right. Number 2, zoning ordinance amendment.
I'm gonna do this real quick, Mr. President. I'm not
All right.
gonna do anything near what we did last time. I just have, first of all, I didn't have a lot of time to get to it, but just a few comments.
sure.
Thank you.
And we can reserve discussion for a later date. I just went through chapter 7 through 17. And I do want to say that there are several chapters that there are just, I don't have any proposed changes to. So it's not going to be quite as daunting as it might appear. But in chapter 7, the industrial district, and Dave, this came from, again, from your document that you helped, that you put together that was the result of what the planning commission had done in previous years. There's a proposed table of uses in chapter 22 for commercial and manufacturing zoning districts. And it has potential, it does have allowable uses for M1. It doesn't define them yet. But my point in this paragraph is just that you have allowable uses in all of your zoning districts, your residential and your commercial zoning districts. And their uses are allowed to go in those zoning districts based on that list of allowable uses. I'm not sure why you don't do that for manufacturing as well. Jerry, you and I had a chance to briefly discuss this before the meeting tonight, but it seems to me that you've got a list of allowable uses rather than making every use that wants to go into an industrial zoning district come before the BZA for a special use. The list of allowable uses should just determine that like it does in all the other zoning districts. I'm not sure why manufacturing was singled out to come for a special use. And certainly that's your decision if you want to do that. It just seemed different to me. I've not seen that before, so.
Mr. President.
I had told, and in our conversation, I had mentioned to him that perhaps because of these property arrangements, keeping, go ahead.
Let's go back to the beginning of the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance was adopted in December of 1989. It's been amended, in bits and pieces since then. But in 1989, this community was a rural residential community. Had a little itty bitty street that had a couple of industrial buildings on it. And it was basically that. The makers of that document felt they wanted to have complete control. And if there was an industrial use or an expansion of that type of use, the intensity of the use basically, given the primarily residential nature of the community, that's why they did it. And it required an extra layer, if you will, of scrutiny, evaluation, control, and exercise of the police power. That was it.
Everybody, the industrial
think-
drive,
yeah.
everything on industrial drive has to come
That's
to
that's
BZA
right.
anyway, right? Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, because of the way M1 is. Like, I was in St. Charles today, and the industrial park is right next to a residential neighborhood. And in Schaumburg, you have that, and a lot of different areas where, and I suspect the only good out of a statement like that would be, we would, if we listed a list of uses, some of them might need to be asterisked and then abide by that, such as a 24-hour, 7-day a week, 365-day a year stamping plant. The constant, you would hear it.
Right.
So it would be a nuisance, right? So that's probably where that stems from in 1989. Because the only thing we had back then was Vanco Machine Shop. And they turned chips and they cut chips and they, did what they needed to
There were two
do.
businesses on the highway.
But
but-
what Rick is saying is that like a stamping plant, you wouldn't have that listed there, right?
You probably have that as an M2, an M2 use.
Okay.
instead
I think
of
you
an
should
M1.
copy and paste what typical communities M1s are. If nothing else, it gives everybody an idea of what those industries are.
Sure. yeah.
I think I would add that and then,
And you already have some protections in your
Let
ordinance
us
built
look at it.
in terms of setbacks. If you have a an industrial use next to a residential zoning district, the setback for the structure has to be much, I think it's 150 feet, David. I'm not, I don't remember off the top of my head, but its setback for the building is much greater. So you do have some protections in your ordinance now. It just seems like you should have an allowable list of uses in M1
I
and
would
let
agree.
that prevail.
And then in our industrial park, it was there before, and now we've got a residential adjacent to it.
That's called out in the ordinance, how to deal with that.
Yeah, sometimes it's coming to the nuisance, as Dave knows, there's that term about coming to the nuisance. If you build a Centennial subdivision right up to the back of the industrial development that's already been there,
It's like moving in by the racetrack and complaining about the noise.
and complaining about the noise.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or O'Hare Airport, they just added people.
So is everybody good with Rick adding that?
I think some examples would be great.
okay, we'll do so.
That'd be great.
We do have on page 3 of that same section, and I'm sure this was just a cut and paste mistake, but it does say in there, in the M1 zoning district, it gives a restriction on, or it mentions the building size for residential purposes shall be X, Y, and Z, and we wouldn't want a residential allowed in M1 anyway, so
No.
that I think that just needs to be stricken. Chapter 8 is special zoning districts, and it lists floodplain, floodway, and floodway fringe. And last time we met, we agreed that we were going to eliminate those as zoning districts. So we can just eliminate that chapter. I didn't have any changes proposed to the PUD. Chapter 9, I would like to reserve the opportunity to look at a little bit closer, but I didn't have any.
I have a suggestion for that.
Yes, sir.
If the PUD changes ownership within a certain time frame, that it be essentially nullified. We had a problem with Union Station that really, how that zoning carried after it changed hands, it kind of came back and bit us.
Well, that was a
little bit.
zone change versus a PUD.
Yeah, but the PUD carried
But he's talking about a term of time,
the term of
Yeah.
time.
that the PUD.
But once you give someone
Approval
zone
as a
change,
life.
it's
As
for
a
life.
That is a 5-year now.
Well, you have, that's the other thing that I think part of that needs to be discussed. It's pretty common language these days, Dave, to say a PUD is supposed to be finished within 5
5
years.
years.
Our language is,
I think it's 5.
it is 5 years, but it is not mandatory. It is, the language actually says.
It's a guideline, not a rule.
The PUD has, let me read it so I don't misstate it. But it does say 5 years, but it says it has to be able to be completed. Here it is. It has to be able to be completed in 5 years. So in other words, David, it doesn't use the term must.
Right.
It says can. So it's permissive. It's not mandatory. St. John's got the same language. Dyer's got the same language. Many communities are starting to do that. I'm not altogether certain why, because I know there's probably some examples, but you know, Dave, the Gates of St. John, for example, that was a PUD approved back in 2006, and
Centennial's the same way. It was approved in 07.
right.
Still
But
building.
however, the 5-year restriction in St. John was not in place when Gates of St. John was approved. But nonetheless, the reality of the situation is, are you going to stop a PUD after 5 years if it's not complete? And it does say that all buildings, roads, infrastructure, I can certainly understand if the infrastructure needing to be in there, but all buildings, meaning all houses, or if it happens to be industrial, commercial development, all those buildings have to be done. Not sure about that and how
It's
enforced.
by custom and practice, so we treated here in Cedar Lake as like pods or like
Phases.
phases. Phases is a common term, and if phases are moving along smoothly. We've got Centennials, it's 15 phases, for crying out loud.
Yep.
Right.
Most of them aren't that, but sometimes they are. And I think we had some language that probably, given one of the old top phases being 6 lots or something de minimis, that we updated the ordinance about that. That's how we've
That was
construed it.
Birchwood.
I'm
That was
sorry.
a specific thing to Birchwood, that they be limited to 5 phases or something throughout the entire
There you
PUD.
go. Maybe we did it by the approval process because we can require it in the contract.
I just
So
thought we
that, so
ran
you're suggesting a timeline and ownership?
No, I mean, we ran into a problem with Union Station because the original owner was trying to sell it with specialized zoning that was approved with it. I mean, that was a specialized PUD.
We did. He sold it to the farmer who farmed it.
Yeah, but I think the town was wanting to send it back to the original zoning
Well, I think that,
at that point.
well,
because-
right, and we screwed up, we being whoever was here when it was approved, because we didn't put a time limit on you either build in X number of years or the zoning reverts back.
Yeah.
We gave carte blanche, zone change. And when you do that, it's like summer winds across from Hanover Central. I think in the 80s, that went from agricultural to multifamily, for example. And the people left for 25 or 30 years and came back and started coming in here to get permits and
Isn't the
we're
zone change,
blindsided.
isn't the zone change tied to the PUD though? That is
Not
zoning.
always.
The PUD is a zoning change.
It is.
The PUD is, the plat is the.
So if
essentially
you,
the Site plan, development plan for the construction.
No,
and
true.
construction.
So your original comment, Don, was about ownership.
Yeah.
So it seems like it's less about the owner than it is about timeline.
yeah,
I'd
and
be
how the
concerned
PUD was,
about the ownership being a tag. I'd be really concerned about that. Things can change hands. and
Yeah.
We're gonna alienate or restrict transferability of property. That's because of change of ownership. That could have legal challenge.
Yeah, that seems very problematic.
That could have a take,
So-
inverse take component to it.
So we need both of those things, ownership and,
No,
Probably just a termination, a terminus.
If nothing has started.
I think the zone change should be tied to the PUD.
It is.
It is.
Don, it is a PUD. The
I know.
PUD is a zoning district classification.
But take Bay Bridge Estates, which was approved as a PUD almost 15 years ago at this point. I've heard that the PUD should have expired by now, but the zoning is still current. How does that work?
Well, the zoning
Because that was
district
a pod.
classification was made when the ordinance was adopted by the council.
The annexation or the PUD?
The zoning.
The PUD, the zoning.
So if the PUD expires, does it revert back to the original zoning before
It would.
PUD approval?
If there were a reversion clause available, yes, or the 5-year term and
Because I've heard that they're claiming, yes, the PUD may be expired, but the zoning still carries.
well, you can claim what they want.
But the PUD is the zoning.
It is,
Yeah.
that's right, it is the
It
zoning.
is, and it's no different than rezoning it from R1 to R2. Why should
What's its-
why should R2 expire? Particularly because of change of ownership of the development. Why should, I think that's really problematic. But why should the R2 ever expire?
But why did Union Station not revert back to ag then, after the PUD, after 5 years?
Because we didn't
You
have.
may not have had this regulation at the time.
We didn't have it.
The 5-year restriction has been relatively new I think in most communities, Dave. I think in St. John, they didn't adopt it until about 2009.
You know, this happened after that. This was probably 2010 or 11 that we did it, but it was because nothing happened with that railroad. The developer didn't start building them gazillion units they were gonna build. And then it just sat and went into cornfield.
Now, a development plan, Dave, that has only a 3-year protection under the law, correct?
I don't think it has any time period on it, a
If
development
they,
plan.
if they don't start the development, I thought if they didn't start a development within 3 years of its
It's
approval,
not statutory.
okay.
And then we got John Lawton that proposed all those pod units out there by
That's Bay Bridge.
149.
That's Bay Bridge.
That's Bay Bridge.
And he never did anything.
Let me just read you, it's just a real quick paragraph. It says, this is about the PUD and the 5 years. The proposed planned unit development zoning district and all proposed buildings, parking spaces, landscaping and utility areas can be completely developed within 5 years of the establishment of the zoning district. That's one of the findings of fact that you folks are supposed to consider when you're making your recommendation for the rezoning of the PUD. But it's, again, it's it's not a mandatory or a must provision.
Right, and that also inures to the contract zoning nature of a PUD. The give and take, the terms and conditions you deem reasonable and impose.
Right.
The proposals made by the developer in response to that, it's kind of negotiation, give and take.
But I think you said you used, with Centennial is a PUD, did you say?
Yes.
And how many phases is that?
15, 16.
That's quite a few.
So the expectation that that be done in 5 years just doesn't.
Well, and with the building and with the, you know, the
Yeah.
pressure.
The
in
economy at the
08,
time killed
yeah,
that.
09
Well,
killed
we ended
it.
up doing a PUD in Havenwood. Havenwood took what,
Yes.
about 10, 12 years. total?
Still building.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Still
Now, again,
building.
that might have predated the 5-year clause in here, but
It did. That was in the mid to late 90s.
So Rick, you're recommending,
Yeah, but they had about a 3-year period in there where they couldn't get any sewer taps,
Right.
so they couldn't build.
Yeah, no, there's no question.
Yeah.
Development.
So I mean, if it was 10 years, cut it down to, you know, like 7 to do that.
so Mr. Austin, the changing from can to must is a pretty simple fix.
Well, it is, but.
I'm not suggesting you do.
Yeah, I'm not either.
Okay.
No,
I
no.
wouldn't say
I think that
flexibility
becomes
in
so
PUD.
problematic.
You want to leave
If
it.
you have a successful PUD, let's take, I don't know that much about Centennial, but let's say it's successful and it's progressing. Why would you pull the rug out from under them after 5 years? I just don't see it.
I don't either.
No.
Well, I mean,
I think
they could ask for an extension.
Well, it doesn't say that in here, but I think they could. I don't think there's any reason why they couldn't ask.
I mean, if it's moving along,
It would be surplus though, in my mind. But they could ask and they'd make a paper trail that way.
And yet, when we do plats of subdivision, as you probably know, when we give a primary plat of subdivision approval, it's good for 12 months. A person can come in and renew that. Our rules say that. You can come in and renew it for another 12 months at a time, and there's no limit to the number of times you can ask for an extension. But every time you get a secondary plat of a development, let's say you know, you got 200 lot subdivision, you do a primary plat on, and you're gonna develop it into phases. Every time you get a secondary plat approval, it automatically extends the primary plat on the balance of the property for another year. So with a standard subdivision, if Centennial was done that way, Dave, and it was 15 units, that thing could be extended out 15 years with nothing more than just the process of getting a secondary plat approved, but a PUD can't.
True, but you also have with the secondary, the surety that's gonna put the infrastructure in for that phase or that pod or that
Right.
unit.
Right.
And you know that you're holding the money.
But you could have that with a PUD as well, and yet the PUD doesn't enjoy the same ability to automatically, to get beyond 5 years. So I just think the 5-year restriction, to me, is too restrictive. I'm not suggesting you make it a must. The can makes it a permissive and
That makes sense. I think you go with it.
Just leave it like it is, probably.
okay. Chapter 10, page 4, section 1. Oh, this was just something we dealt with last time. There's this particular section says there shall not be more than one permissible principal use per lot in any zoning district. We agreed 2 weeks ago that we were going to get rid of that. Chapter 11 is supplementary zoning regulations. This is where we need to have more discussion on accessory structures. I don't intend to do that tonight. It's just something we need to discuss. Chapter 12, parking. The big thing that sticks out to me there is the parking for elementary and middle schools. We ran into that problem where we realized our current parking ordinance is probably too restrictive. It requires too much parking for a middle school and elementary school. So we need to look at that formula that we discovered when we were going through that process.
I guess the amount of employees should be the formula, huh?
Yeah. Yep. Mhm. The chapter 13 landscaping requirements. we need to add some landscaping requirements in there, and I can get examples of other communities that have those. I would like to, not tonight, but I'd like to spend a little time discussing the fencing of corner lots and through lots at a future date. Chapter 14 is lighting. We reference ordinance 1265 there. I just think we need to add it into the ordinance, our lighting ordinance into the zoning ordinance. So just a matter of adding that. Reserve comments on the sign ordinance for a later date. I didn't see anything in there that jumped out at me, but I didn't spend as much time on it as I'd like to. Same with non-conforming uses, structures, and lots. Just like to take a look at that. Again, I didn't have enough time to look at it. Chapter 17 is, and that's the last comment I've got, is the administration and enforcement. The BZA's rules and regulations appear in this section of the zoning ordinance, and David and I talked about that. Assuming the Board of Zoning Appeals adopts new rules and regulations, we have to amend this section of the zoning ordinance because those rules and regulations appear in here. So we'll have to do that as well. You've got a sentence there, Dave, and I'll just read it to you because I apologize, you don't have the page in front of you. We don't do this as a practice, and I'm not sure why this language was in here, but it says, prior to a public hearing, the Board of Zoning Appeals shall refer the appeal or application to the Plan Commission for review and comment.
That's old language. It's got to go.
It's got to go.
That's got to go.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
That goes back to a time before the 89 amendments or the 91 amendments to the planning code, where there was processes, a step process for review, kind of like a filter. Plan Commission saw it, BZA got it and adjudicated it.
Okay.
And those days are gone.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had on the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
Gentlemen.
All right, thank you. Item 4, Summer Winds Commercial, letter of credit. How are we with that, Don?
They're
Are we
both,
doing 3?
you need
Number
three,
4.
skip 3. Skip 3.
You skipped 3.
Oh, I'm sorry. Planning Commission Rules and Regulations. Yeah.
Which we went over last month, and my notes reflected, the only thing I changed in it from our discussion last month was that the notice, we talked about adjacent and a letter. So we had quite a bit of discussion about that. The last note I had was, and I think John made the recommendation that we require adjacent letters to go out and a sign on all properties. Is that how everybody wanted that, or are you comfortable with just the way we do it now?
I don't like the sign on all residential property. I think John mentioned signs on commercial
Yeah.
and residential, leave it the way it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I like that one better. I don't know how everybody else feels.
I'm fine with that.
I'm with you, John. Yeah.
Okay, so signs.
I mean, we could, I think, say beyond it, what's the little subdivision in Cedar Point Park, not the 9-house subdivision? What is it called?
The new one.
Tasty Top. Oh, Dave?
Perry's Folly.
Offshore state.
So
There you go.
I guess the question would become, for a large development, do we want to have a sign, even though it's residential? Cut it off at some number, whether it's 15 homes, 8 homes, 5. I mean, would we want to incorporate that into the business?
I don't think we complicate it.
No, I
Just keep it
agree.
simple.
I
I
agree.
think we can review it in a year or 6 months or
Yeah,
whether there needs to be
yeah.
a change, but right now I don't think it's not broke to fix, or if it's not,
Yeah,
Yeah,
not
that's
broke
right.
to fix.
I agree.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
just leave it, so make it a sign for commercial and no letter,
Just adjacent.
a sign and notify adjacent property owners for commercial, and just leave it the way it is for residential.
Yes.
Is that what we're saying?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Then I'll make that change. And we'll propose it for action at a future meeting.
I think the insanity of trying to catch everything would be exactly that. For example, Heather wants to add 2 more stories to her house. Adjacent property owners might be good with it, but somebody 500 feet away may not be. So,
Okay, well, thank you. That's all I have on that one.
okay. We'll skip the summer, we'll get to Summer Winds Commercial, letter of credit.
I believe these two are expiring in May, so we'll have something. Beacon Point, we have with 4 we're reviewing now. We just were waiting for the snow to melt to do some field stuff.
Okay.
So they will be wrapped up.
Right. Yes, we get the public comment. Is there any public who wants to make a comment? Public comment?
Oh, here comes trouble.
And I didn't bring her here for that. She just wanted dinner, so we went to dinner first.
I was gonna say, maybe-
Rich Teal, 13513 Industrial Drive. Just a couple of questions about like proposed new industrial areas, stuff like that. Regarding like, what would determine what is allowable versus special use? Like how would they, say this kind of plant can be here or manufacturing, this one can't?
I'm going to say that it very likely, it's going to just the noise, for example.
What about like traffic and stuff like that,
Well, that all has to play a part. I mean, it'd be, no
Yeah,
different
just knowing the amount of trucks,
Yeah.
That I have or versus Ozingas versus the more traffic we do have going down Industrial Drive and people driving up and down there, just in cars and stuff like that. I'm just wondering shouldn't it all be like special use, just so everybody has like traffic studies done, stuff like that on what they're actually proposing?
Well, and that's one of the reasons I was alluding when Mr. Everly and I talked earlier this evening. Because of these circumstances, exactly what you're talking about. For example, the place north of you who is washing tanks. We needed to know what they're really washing.
Yes.
Washing tanks out. So his samples, I'm quite interested to see how they're gonna
Yeah, because I'd like to
fit
know
here.
what they are
How
too,
they're gonna
just
fit
to
here.
know who considers it allowable versus what is and what isn't.
And who makes that decision, Rich, will be these folks here.
Yeah.
The planning commission will make that decision, but you might have in a list of 20 allowable, let's just say uses in an M1 zoning district, you might have a handful of those that the planning commission still says will allow it in M1, but only with a special exception.
Okay.
So it could still have to go to the BZA. If they think that the intensity of that use is okay for an M1 zoning district, but maybe needs a little more scrutiny, then they could still say that this one needs special exception.
And certainly in your neighborhood, the 311 shift, not your 311 shift, but the 311 shift, you can hear the dust collector. Even while you're pumping gas at Casey, you can hear the dust collectors back there screaming. So those are the kind of things that we have to sort out.
Yeah.
But because everything's so close together, I don't disagree with what you're saying. We got to keep it.
Yeah, I was just, when you mentioned it, I was like, well, what, who determines it and how and why and all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah, it'll be these folks and with the council ultimately yaying or naying whatever changes you make to the zoning ordinance.
Yeah, but it's important that we do it now because we have a new industrial park being built. We don't need every one of those folks having to go to the BZA meeting. If they're putting a business in that fits that list, buy the permit,
Well, and that's just what I was trying to figure out, what would determine and this is okay, this isn't, and stuff like that. And would that be like a public meeting and stuff like that?
It'll be right here.
Yeah, but it
When
would
we
be public
discuss it and
meeting and
approve
with
it.
comments and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, that's it.
Who's responsible for that road? I noticed when I drove through there today, there's a big old hole in the road.
Well, that's still to be determined, right?
Okay.
I'm not gonna answer that one.
All right.
Jerry,
Okay, yeah. Yes, sir.
I will probably be the advocate. I have a different view about those industrial zoning regulations than Rick does. I understand your view of it. I get it. But you're vested with police powers to protect this community. And, if a steel mill goes up on Route 41 in a newly annexed area that's about to come in, we're not really talking about industrial uses being permitted for that zoning if in fact you got a list and steel mills in it. You're really thinking about the rest of the community and what's adjacent, what's nearby, what's in a zoning district, if you will, if that use will impair and adversely affect growth and quality of life in areas nearby. So, and you read about this stuff all the time. East Chicago, there are federal lawsuits constantly over the impact, the adverse impact over decades, of course, in those neighborhoods. The feds pretty much live up there and file lawsuits and serve subpoenas.
And based on what you're saying, for example, you get south on Parish to the east. 500,000 square foot building goes in. Those neighborhoods that are there are a ways away, but put a railroad siding in, and now all they hear is train cars being hitched and unhitched all night long.
Yeah.
So those are all those little details that we have to, we have to
Well, I
make
would
sure.
like to
talking
see
about-
what Rick is going to present us of what the other communities say can be built. And then taken from there, we can make a decision whether we want to go ahead with a list. Do we want no list? Do we want everybody to come to BZA? Because I think you need, like David's saying, you need better control. Because you just say, well, you can put this in there, but then all of a sudden he's got, 5 times more employees than what was intended. And,
Second shifts, third shifts.
right, so I'd like to see what Rick's recommendations are and go from there.
Absolutely. What we're really talking about, though, is another layer, a single layer of review. BZA. And if an industrial user is coming in, let's pick any industrial user, Ozinga Concrete, Schilling Distribute, pick Richie Teal. One more meeting. These are businessmen. They know how this works. They know how they have to explain their business plan. They know how they have to show how they are going to be corporate citizens and follow our rules, and it's kind of an acquaintanceship on top of it. But it's your last line of control.
It's not like we're gonna have 10 of these at one
No.
BZA.
But we do have things happening in the community, and they're gonna be in areas that are rural, cornfields.
I know cities have C1, C2, et cetera. Towns pretty much are all usually M1 and then industrial. Or is there no set rule?
I'm not exactly sure what you mean, but
So we call it M1.
we call it M1, St. John and Dyer call it LI, light industrial.
Gotcha.
But it's,
I like LI better than M1.
M1 does come
Sounds
with
better.
parentheses, light industrial.
Gotcha.
That's the way we call it.
And that's what I envision happening on 41's
Yeah.
industrial park.
And then
light industrial.
You wouldn't have heavy.
Office up
heavy
front
duty-
and-
Yeah, you wouldn't have heavy duty industrial uses in an M1. That would be reserved for them.
North of north of Sherville Town Hall and Kennedy, is that the town of Sherville where all those?
It is.
Mhm.
Junction and Kennedy.
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's a pretty nice industrial area
Yeah, it
for
is.
companies.
It is.
But most of those companies are not open more than 10 hours.
Yeah,
a day.
correct. They're just
No, that's right.
entrepreneurial
And those-
guys that
And your
have a
suggestions could be
business.
on the list with the stipulations of perhaps only being open
Hours, yeah.
hours.
Sure. Yeah, I'll get you that.
Okay. All right. Let's see. There was back in November 2020, Mr. Kubiak was asking about water and a waiver on behalf of a petitioner. Does anybody have that homework? I mean, was there a waiver for Mr. Henn in his White House to get on his own well?
I don't think we ever heard anything else. Have we?
Well, Neil sent Jill and Tim all the information, but we haven't given it.
I thought they were supposed to go up by the viaduct. and turn around.
Well, yes, and John was here. We discussed the
That's right,
infrastructure and the investment that the town may have to make, and the master plan being everybody, new stuff gets on the water. So I don't know what the status of that is.
Are you talking about the King parcel or his house?
His house.
His house.
I thought he was tapping into it, but.
Well, Tim, on his
Yeah,
behalf,
you can give us an update the next meeting.
on his behalf, Tim said that,
Yeah, he said if I can't find it, can I do it well? And
well, Neil
I don't know
sent.
whatever happened.
Okay, well, that's what I'm asking, because these are all those things that fall through the cracks and then,
Yeah.
then they become,
And my stance on that would be similar. That's kind of like a road to nowhere, I think we talked about, and I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but it's kind of similar to the guy that came to the last plant commission meeting that wanted to buy the 10 acres south of the golf course. If we're in a position to give a person water, great. If we're not, here's plan A, we can get you water in 5 to 10 years. Plan B, you can put your own wells in. Plan C, you can do a community well, and then later on, maybe town buys it.
except the guy down at the end of the golf course was just gonna sell the lots outright, so he had no intention of providing any
No, he wants to
infrastructure
let
at
them
all
put a well.
that we could take over later.
Yeah, I just threw it out there.
I talked to Brenda Roberts, who owns that property. She has no clue who this guy is.
No, she contacted a realtor. That's how business works.
Yeah, well,
She shouldn't know anything unless she was sitting in this meeting.
So back to my original question. I mean, I'd like to know what's going on with that.
Sure, I'll check into that, Jerry, but I'm fairly certain, Don, doesn't the subdivision control ordinance say that if water is not available, you can do it well?
It does.
yeah.
Well, that was,
Still allowed, well.
but that was, the, one of the caveats was, it's not real close.
I think he
And we
liked the public water initially. I
Yeah,
think
he
was
wanted-
hoping
He-
he
I
could
thought
he
that's
agreed-
what he
well, he-
wanted first, yeah.
Well, no, he agreed to that. He said, no problem, no problem, no problem. Then there was some discussion about tearing up the road.
Right.
And then it was, we don't know where it's at in the road.
Yeah.
Well, Neil sent me documentation. I could find it in the road.
Yeah, we know where it's at.
So what is, I'm just curious because again, these things don't get up back on the
We
same
have
list.
surveyed it. We know where it's at.
Yeah, what I recall of it was Tim was concerned about the cost to us to get to the water main. Does that ring a bell with you, John?
Correct.
That's what I recall, but I'll check on it,
It's
sure.
in the center of the road. In fact,
Yeah, it's in the center of the road.
But we also discussed the valves
just
that
did
were
the
by the
road.
tracks.
I don't know where the nearest valve is. You'd have to hot tap into it, probably.
No, there's valves by the tracks. It's not a question. It's on
I don't
Neil's.
think he's gonna run a service line all the way down to the valve though.
But providing water service for the future, to any and all those homes, because someday when you're well, you will not be able to replace your well. You'll have to tap on what's there.
It's not the way the subdivision ordinance reads.
No, if your well goes out and you want to get another well and there's water there, you can drill another well.
That's how it is right now.
Yes, sir.
There's nothing in the subdivision that
I
forces
I
it.
wanted that in there when we went to this.
I understand. I understand. But again, that's how it is now. That's not how it's gonna be in the future. So, okay, I just got a text from somebody. Has a permit been issued in the ministries for a new home?
No, Tim had told them, and that's what I wanted to get back to that your earlier comment, Jerry, to make sure that we were clear on this. At least since I've been here, what Tim has been telling me is that he's told the ministries folks that they can't get any more new permits until they work out this.
And that's what we all agree, we all agreed to that, yeah.
Right, but that doesn't mean there's not been permits issued there for other things, remodels, roofs, re-siding, whatever. There's been permits issued in that property, but not for new housing that I'm aware of. No. Tim did say to me that there's one lot on the very south, and I don't know if he talked to you about this, Jack, on the very south end of the property that I think he said there used to be a home on the site that was moved, and he wouldn't have a problem issuing a permit for a house on that lot. And again, I'd have to revisit that with him, but Tim said nothing can be done on that north end of the property until a drainage plan is worked out with.
There was a site plan for that one on the very far south. That was a couple months ago. I think 3 months ago.
Yeah, because all the trees are cut down. Are you good with the stormwater situation there? With the new home being there?
It was, I think, this lot, you see.
Yeah,
That lot?
way down at the.
Yeah, it's on the south
Yeah,
boundary.
it's where the one of the old buildings that was the wood shop. The shop there was torn down.
Yeah.
I think the site plan came into us for review. I don't know if the building permit was ever released for it. I have no clue.
I don't know.
So you're,
Released?
There's one house there, either that lot or the
One of these.
yeah, one of these two.
this one or this?
That is planning, hoping to build this summer.
Okay, but it hasn't been released, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
All right.
That's not it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Cool.
so keep a close eye on that, because that's a stormwater.
We had some comments on it. The rear lot doesn't drain particularly well. We haven't seen it. I don't think we've seen a recent middle for it,
Okay.
probably because of this.
John, did you issue comments on it?
We did.
Okay.
We did.
Okay.
Okay. I guess I'll go around the room. Mr. Everly, anything else?
No, sir.
Carnahan?
No,
Nope.
sir.
Don?
Nope.
John's good.
I'm good.
Ms. Sharp's good. You?
No, sir.
No, sir. Chuck? See what time it is? Heather?
Good,
Drive yourself next time, would you?
for sure.
All right, Mr. Austin. Okay, all right, meeting's adjourned.